Today we're going to talk about the environmental impact and, more importantly, the health impact of fracking. So I want to give you some context here. I'm a bit of a skeptic when it comes to the bad effects of all these different kinds of energy sources, partly because I grew up a Republican, partly because I hope that I am practical and pragmatic, and I know that we need energy of some sort. Yes, renewable energy is much, much better. But when Al Gore first started talking about climate change, I thought, yeah, I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it. Now, I was young back then. But then, you know, what wound up happening is they started putting together one report after another, and you just started seeing the temperatures rise year after year after year. So one record after another. And then the evidence became overwhelming. And then 97% of the world's scientists said, yes, it's real and yes, it's man-made. Then I thought, well, okay, I wanted evidence. I got it. So jury's in on that. Now, when it came to fracking, again, I was open-minded, and some might argue too open-minded, saying, look, we do need the energy somehow. So let's see what happens here. Well, I understood, of course, about possibility of spills, the methane, maybe polluting the local water supply. I understood those risks were involved. Well, now we're getting more evidence. First of all, the earthquakes got proven out. Right? No question that they cause far more earthquakes in the places where there is significant fracking. The jury's in on that. The evidence is overwhelming. On the health issues, there was not yet a lot of great evidence. For example, there was only 2 studies that covered some of the physical responses to fracking that people would have in the areas where they did more fracking, and those studies had less than 500 participants. But now there's a new one in the environmental health perspectives, and it covers a lot more people, and I want to tell you about that and the results they got. So they say researchers evaluated the response of nearly 8,000 people on the Geisinger Health System, a healthcare provider that covers about 40 counties in north and central Pennsylvania. The questionnaires did not mention fracking. Now that's important because they don't want to cue you in to a certain response. If you're pro-fracking or anti-fracking politically, that might change your responses. So they don't mention that at all. They just take an area where there is heavy fracking and compare it to areas where there is not heavy fracking. They don't mention fracking at all. And now 8,000 people, that's a significant questionnaire. So all right, let's see what the results were. Okay, researchers used residential addresses and data on Pennsylvania's fracked wells from state agencies and other sources to rank participants depending on how close they lived to fracking operations. Respondents living closer to the wells were 49% more likely to report sinusitis and migraines, 88% more likely to report sinusitis and fatigue, and 84% to report all 3 conditions. Okay. Now, this was led by some researchers from Johns Hopkins. So the people in the study didn't know that they were in a fracking study. They were just reporting migraines they actually had, and sinusitis that they had, fatigue that they had. And when you map it out, it's around the areas where they are closer to fracking. And the closer you get, the more intense it gets. Now, again, it's the first study. There'll be a lot more, and perhaps there'll be some back and forth on this. But that's an important data point, and it leads you in the direction of, yeah, there's something going on with fracking that's making us sicker. So, I mean, I look at that study and I go, now, do I want to live near an area where there's fracking? Jury is not 100% in, but you can see why people would want to be a little bit more cautious, okay? Now, by the way, that's not the only health effects. Last fall, Johns Hopkins researchers found a link between fracking and premature births and high-risk pregnancies. And in July, scientists found links between fracking and asthma. Now, we're going to need a lot more information about what's possibly causing the pregnancy-related issues, the asthma, the migraines, et cetera, and figure out, you know, what it is that we have to contain or if it's uncontainable. But if you hear from somebody saying, oh, fracking, it doesn't cause any issues at all, it's wonderful, it's a panacea, it just gives you energy and there's no downside. No, that's obviously and clearly not true at this point. Okay, now there are some people like Seth Whitehead. He is from Energy in Depth. That's a think tank. First, let me give you his quote, and then I'll tell you where that think tank gets their money. He says, with this research team's track record of biased studies and activism considered, along with the sheer absurdity of blaming such common ailments on fracking, It comes to no surprise that their conclusions are yet again highly suspect. You're going to be shocked to find out that that think tank is financed by the Independent Petroleum Association of America. Say it with me. Of course they are. And he has the nerve to call Johns Hopkins biased. Dude, your whole job is biased. The whole point of your job is propaganda to tell us that fracking is wonderful. So you'll excuse us if we treat your propaganda with a grain of salt as opposed to what the researchers found out about actual ailments. And when you say, it's absurd to think that this could be caused by fracking, that is not science. It is not evidence. That's just your opinion, man. An opinion funded by a lot of petroleum dollars, and in this case, fracking dollars. So keep it real. So guys, it doesn't mean that fracking is the worst thing on the planet and that we have as much evidence on that as we do on some of the other energy sources. But if there's a question as to whether there should be a cause for concern, the answer is yes. Clearly, the research is now indicating there is cause for concern.